Hello everyone, Thomas signing in with a new video once again. In this video I will discuss the confusion of Quran and Muhammad about Jesus. We know from Quran that Muhammad learned most of his Christian knowledge from the so-called heretical sects who were living in his vicinity in Najran. These heretical sects believed that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was part of Trinity, and they also believed in things like that Jesus raised dead people, healed sick persons, made clay birds and breathed in them life, and they flew away. These stories were around Muhammad, and now we see them in the Quran as well today. For example, in Surah 5 verses 110 is absolute proof Muhammad's adoption of these stories in the Quran. However, this story goes on further, and Muhammad had confusing thoughts about Jesus. His only knowledge was those Christian sects, or he may have learned from Warqa bin Nawfal, who was the cousin of his first wife Khadija. Muhammad was also a trader in his early life, and he had learned many things during his travel to Syria especially. Prior to Muhammad's claim of Nabuwah, he was a pagan Arab, and he was a superstitious man. He had heard and watched and practiced the pagan rituals around him. Because some of these things which made his personality was important to know, as when we see Jesus' life in the story today, we will see that what was his mindset about the Jesus. Muhammad made confusing statements in the Quran about Jesus, whether he was a god or not, or how God should look like. Now first we see what Muhammad was saying about the so-called false gods in the Quran. In chapter 25 verse 3 he said, "And they have taken beside him gods who do not create anything while they are themselves created, and they control not for themselves any harm or profit, and they control not death nor life, nor raising the dead to life." Now these preceding verses states that 1. The objects which other call upon beside God, that is whether other gods, angels and or individuals, have not created anything. Number 2, these objects cannot bring death, cause life or resurrect. Number 3, these objects of worships are dead, which implies that God is the creator. 2, God is the source of life, and the God is ever living. Muhammad agreed this criteria when he spoke about Jesus in the Quran. Yes, he agreed Jesus did these things, and we can see his confusion once again in the chapter 3 verses which says, "And Allah will make him a messenger unto the children of Israel, saying, Lo, I come unto you with a sign from your Lord. Lo, I fashion for you out of clay the likeness of a bird, and I breathed into it, and it is a bird, by Allah's leave. I heal him who was born blind and the leper, and I raise the dead by Allah's leave. And I announce unto you what ye eat, and what ye store up in your houses. Lo, herein verily is a portent for you, if ye are to be believers." Now I gave you above reference of verses 5, 110, chapter 5, 110. As well, in both of these verses Jesus was supposedly creating life, raising dead people, which according to Muhammad only God can do. In 25:3 and even in chapter 6 verses 2 and chapter 38 verses 71 to 72, Allah was supposedly creating life from clay and then breathing in life. So from Muhammad's own standard, he made Jesus a god. In all these verses, whenever Allah or Muhammad meant creation from nothing, they use Arabic word khalaqa. So Muhammad was referring Jesus did create things from nothing like Allah usually do. And Muslim may say that Jesus was given the ability to create and give life by God, just as the passages themselves state. He didn't even have his ability within himself. This response doesn't solve the contradiction, but only pushes it to a new level. Why would God grant Jesus the abilities and the characteristics of deity? Why is God permitting Jesus to perfectly fit the description and fulfill the criteria which places one within the category of God? Muhammad thought of Jesus that he was ever living like God. You see, this is amazing on the part of Muhammad. In order to please Christians and gain their support, he went extreme, only to find out that his attempts to please them and gain their support will not fulfill. What happened that you have verses which are against them in the Quran as well. Similarly, in this case is the case with the Jews and other religions. When Muhammad wanted to be friendly with them, he had so-called revelation in which he was offering hands of friendship with them, but when they did not accept him, He turned against them. Great. Now to Muhammad's attempt to make Jesus a character who lived forever and is still alive is a no mystery in the Quran and Islam. We see from Quran that he was envisioning about what he was envisioning about Jesus in chapter 3, 39 to 45, and also in verses 4, chapter 4, verses 171. In these verses, these verses support that Jesus' pre-human existence, that prior to becoming man, Jesus already existed with God. After all, in these verses, Muhammad was saying that Jesus is the God's word, and as we know, the God's word is uncreated and originates from within himself, implying that Jesus, since he is a God's word, must also have originated from God himself, and it's therefore eternal. And if this is not it, then read chapter 58 verses 22, which vindicate that obviously from this text that the Spirit shares in the divine qualities and attributes of God. After all, the Spirit is able to empower and strengthen all believers, including indicating that He is all-present, omnipresent, and all-powerful, omnipotent. But only God is omnipresent, omnipotent. Yet Jesus is getting these things from Him. What does this mean? What this means is that Jesus must also be omnipresent and omnipotent, since He is that Spirit from God. It further supports Jesus' pre-human existence. In Surah 4:171 doesn't say that Jesus was a spirit created in Mary's womb. Rather, it expressly says that He is a spirit from God and His word which was given to Mary. Talk about confusion and contradictions. Now, this implies, and all of this mean is that, number one, the Quran denies that Jesus is God or Son of God. Okay, but at the same time, the Quran applies specific titles and functions to Jesus which clearly show that He is more than a human, strongly supporting His divinity and pre-human existence. Quran also says that those objects that are wrongly worshipped by others are unable to create, therefore disqualifying them from being worthy of such adoration and devotion. But when it comes to Jesus, on the other hand, He creates in the same way that Allah created, which shows that He is worthy of the very worship and praise due to Allah. Muhammad was not aware of many things because he had a weak memory. Yes, he had a weak memory, and he tended to forget many things and the Quranic verses. This is why he used to say things which turned later embarrassment for him. For example, he made this statement in the Quran in chapter 21 verses 98. He said, "Verily ye, unbelievers, and the false god that ye worship besides God are but fuel for hell. To it will ye surely come." Interesting, Muhammad knew that the Christian believes Jesus is a god, and for Muhammad he was a false god, or turned out to be a false god later. So in his confusion, he made this assertion that all the false gods will be burning in hell with their followers. Nicely done, right? So thank you very much for listening, and peace be with you all.